Introduction Part 2. During 1973 to 1974 to 1977 to 1978, commitments of assistance from Iran and the Arab countries totaled $1.2 billion, largely on concessional terms. Pakistan was therefore comfortably able to meet as high a current account deficit as 10.1% of GDP in 1975, followed by 7.1 and 7% over the next 2 years. Pervez Hassan has calculated that aid disbursements during the mid-1970s were at a level far above those reached during the 1965 to 1970 period, averaging $600 million annually, which included flows to East Pakistan. After allowing for international inflation, in the 1990s, the foreign currency deposits of resident and non-resident Pakistanis in Pakistani banks, amounting to $11 billion, were utilized to finance external payments. These deposits, as they had already been consumed, were then frozen in May 1998, causing a huge crisis of liquidity and market confidence. This spilled over into the early 2000s. The IMF, World Bank, and Asian Development Bank continued to make loans amounting to several billion dollars between 1988 to 1998, while Japan was the largest bilateral provider of concessional loans and grants until the nuclear test of May 1998. In the post-2008 period, the Kerry-Lager Bill authorized $7.5 billion U.S. economic and military assistance to Pakistan for a five-year period. Multilateral banks and IMF increased the quantum of their support, while Pakistan became the largest recipient of UK aid. In this way, higher volumes of foreign assistance have been received in the post-2008 period, but the average growth rate has hovered around 3 to 4%. It can thus be seen that the periods of high growth rates, the 1960, 1980, and early 2000, did not receive any exceptionally high foreign assistance flows as compared to the periods of 1950, 1970, 1990, and post 2008 years. MC Catney finds no credible evidence to attribute Pakistan's episodes of growth to foreign aid inflows and circumstances emanating from the global economy. Using more rigorous econometrics over a longer period of time, there seems to be little generalized evidence that GDP growth in Pakistan has principally been of the externally dependent variety. MC Cartney is of the view that acceleration of economic growth occurred when the state successfully created conditions in which high profits were generated for investors and credit was channeled towards them. Therefore, the hypothesis of high foreign assistance resulting in high economic performance is not validated by the facts. Coterminous with the foreign aid syndrome is the widespread belief that the US and the Western countries in general have supported military dictators at the expense of democratic governments. Their belief is that they are able to manipulate the strongmen running the country to follow their agenda and interests, and therefore Pakistan's economy has fared well only under the military regimes with the blessings of the US. The frequent dismissal of elected regimes in the 1990s and the coup to overthrow Z.A. Bhutto in 1977 were all engineered under this compact, and the drop in economic performance was caused by the consequential political instability. While it is true that US national interest did coincide with those of Pakistan during the Cold War, the war against the Soviets in Afghanistan, and against Al Qaeda in the 2000, it must be recalled that the US suspended or curtailed economic and military assistance at crucial times in Pakistan's history when the military dictators were still in power. US aid was suspended soon after the 1965 war with India, the 1971 separation of East Pakistan, and under the Symington Amendment in the early period of Zia-ul-Haq rule. Sanctions were imposed in 1999 when General Pervez Musharraf took over the reins of the government. President Bush National Security Advisor Condoleezza Rice has chronicled in her book a memoir of my extraordinary and ordinary family and me. Ember 2000, the efforts made by the US administration to bring in Mohtarma Benazir Bhutto to take over power from Pervez Musharraf in the post-2007 period. The ambivalent attitude of the US can be gauged from the fact that they have supported dictators in Egypt but have for the past 15 years been engaged in the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, Muammar Gaddafi, and Bashar al-Assad in Syria. The close defense, nuclear, and economic relations between India, the largest democracy in the world, and the US do not lend any credence to this theory. Either US national interests in Pakistan have not remained static. US interest has vacillated over time, and their support to Pakistan has been opportunistic, opportunistic rather than strategic or deterministic. Whenever these interests converge with those of Pakistan and notwithstanding irritations and quibbles on both sides, 1950s Santo 1980 expelling the Soviets from Afghanistan and the 2001 to 2016 war in Afghanistan, the US has chosen to assist Pakistan irrespective of the nature of the government in power. We then examine another factor, namely the global economic conditions that may have played a negative role in this outcome. The reality is that the external environment between 1990 and 2008 was an extremely favorable period in which most emerging and developing countries made great economic strides, as Steve Redelet chronicles in his book The Great Surge, while Pakistan fell behind India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Vietnam, and other countries during that period. Since 1995, the real GDP of emerging and developing countries has grown by 4.7% annually on average, and per capita incomes have increased by over 70% between 1995 and 2013. On a population weighted basis, excluding China, the increase has been about 90%. Consequently, the relative share of EDC in the global GDP measured at purchasing power parity increased to 57% in 2014. The number of poor living at $1.90 per day has halved from 2 billion in 1990 to 897 million by 2012, bringing down the share of poor people in the total population from 37 to 30% in 2012. The number of people living at low levels of human development fell from 3 billion in 1990 to slightly over 1 billion in 2014. The share of EDC in the world exports rose from 24 to 41% during this period, and international capital flows jumped from $91 to 1,145 billion dollars. All the social indicators such as life expectancy, maternal mortality, infant mortality, adult literacy, net enrollment ratios, and average years of schooling have shown significant improvements. We can therefore rule out that the external economic environment was a major factor in explaining Pakistan's poor performance during this 25-year period. Other countries in the neighborhood who were lagging behind Pakistan have taken advantage of the dynamic global economy to bring improvements in the living standards of the majority of their people. Some analysts have attributed Pakistan's poor performance to the garrison state syndrome, as Pakistan has been obsessed with confronting a much larger arch rival India since its formation. It has to allocate a much larger amount of its resources to defense expenditure and preserve and expand the corporate interests of the military. Hence, the neglect of education, health, and human development in general, and the diversion of resources to meet the demands of defense, nuclear capability, and other security related expenditure has led to the present economic and social outcomes. The ratio of defense expenditure to GDP has been consistently high in the first 40 years and is now 2.9% of GDP, almost one half of what it was in the 1980. Most of the nuclear related was incurred in the 1970 and 1980. In FY 2016, the budgetary allocation for education was 2.7%. Combining health and education, the budgetary allocation is 3.7% higher than that of defense and internal security. In the education and health sectors, it is governance and management issues that are the impediments in the delivery of these services rather than budgetary allocations. A popular myth that has now become quite entrenched as accepted truth is that of the large corporate interests of the military. It is true that they have foundations and trusts that run enterprises, but the proceeds and profits they earn are utilized for the welfare of army pensioners, particularly the soldiers who retire at any early average age of 45 to 50. The education and health care of their families are financed by the income generated by these foundations and trusts. To put this in perspective, the total market cap in November 2016 of all the listed companies owned by the Fauji Foundation, Army Welfare Trust, Shahid Foundation, and Shaheen Foundation, and Beria Foundation represents only 4.5% of the total market cap of the companies listed on the Pakistan Stock Exchange. These are the big players, and everyone points fingers towards these companies. All of them pay all their taxes on their income, sales, and imports, and do not enjoy any preferential preferential exemptions or receive any special concessions. The share of other unlisted companies in the total assets of unlisted companies is not known but is likely to be quite insignificant as the universe of privately owned enterprises and businesses is substantial. Therefore, the garrison state hypothesis too does not meet the test of evidentiary confirmation.